I'm going to be doing a review of my top 5 books so far in 2022. I'm only doing a top 5. I've read 25 books in the first 6 months, and to me, like, 10 books is almost half of that, so like I wanted to be a little more discerning. So I don't have a particular order for these things. I find it very challenging to rank books in this, like, what was my favorite book, what was my, the top book of the year, because personally I get so many different streams of enjoyment from books. To me, it feels much more useful to break them up, or to just say I enjoyed these 5 books the most. So going on to it, at number 5, which again is pretty arbitrary, I have 5 Days at Memorial by Sheri, Fink. The book itself describes a hospital, Memorial Hospital, and its experiences during Hurricane Katrina. The book is set up, it gives history to the hospital, history to one of the very relevant doctors in the story. Then it talks about sort of what the real-time experiences were in the hospital, what people believed, what they were seeing in front of them, rumors that were flying, and then afterwards it goes into the aftermath. Now, this hospital is important because one of the doctors, Dr. Anna Poe, and two nurses helped her go around and give people Versed, which, from what I understand, it's a drug that relaxes your body to the point of, like, it's like a paralytic, and morphine. And the idea was that they were, giving, in their minds, they claim that they were giving these people like palliative pain care. I don't know if palliative and pain care are the same thing, but they were giving these people like end of life care because these people were dying, and in their minds these people weren't going to survive. But many view it as they were like murdering these people and euthanizing them, even though that's not what they were supposed to be doing. And the book questions who's in the right, who's in the wrong, how do we prevent this, and what were the circumstances that led up to this. I think the book does ask listeners to make a judgment call because the judgment itself was quite vague. I know how I feel about the situation, but I do appreciate that Fink attempts to explain, like, this is what these people thought and believed was true, because we know it's not true. We know some of the things they believed were false, but they did not. And when you're in a moment, when you're dealing with circumstances as they're flying around you, it's really hard to know what decisions you would make. And I don't know, it's quite terrifying and really scary to think about, like, all the mistakes that get made because people just aren't relying on good information. And the book kind of comes to the conclusion that in circumstances of disaster, the most ethical thing you can do is to be prepared for disaster. Another thing I appreciated is the mention of, doctors who've had to operate in sort of subpar conditions. So yeah, maybe you have a doctor who studied at the best facilities in the country, but doctors who've had to really think on their toes, improvise, have been in, war zones, sometimes they're the best when it comes to disasters because they're more prepared for working under extreme conditions. One doctor said something along the lines of, in a moment of a disaster, you never say something that you did not see. If you didn't see it, you cannot then go repeating it because that's how rumors spread. And I thought, wow, that's a really good thing. If I'm ever in, hopefully never, but if I'm ever in a situation like this, what a great lesson to take from a book. If you didn't see it, you don't say it. So yeah, 5 Days at Memorial, fascinating read, and the narrator of it was quite good as well. Moving up, another non-fiction, another audiobook I listened to is This Is Not Propaganda, Adventures in the War on Misinformation. I think that's the full title.
It's not. It's This Is Not Propaganda, Adventures in the War Against Reality.
And this is by Peter Pomerantsev, I believe is how you say his name. And this book goes over how not just misinformation is spreading, but how regimes are using the internet, troll farms, and like Facebook and Instagram, how they're using these resources and social media resources to spread lies, alter facts, and also kind of take the steam out of resistance movements. I thought the book was good. It covered a variety of different events where misinformation has played a big key role. It also talked a lot about the people combating this. I appreciated the mention, of the Philippines, Mexico, Syria, Russia, and even talked about stuff happening in like the UK and the US. That was very nice to have. It wasn't just talking about Russia, but Russia was obviously a very key player in this, especially because Pomerantsev's family comes from Ukraine, and his family had to flee Ukraine. And so they have a lot of experience even before like the internet age of propaganda and misinformation. They were dealing with it beforehand. And I think that knowing some of that background, it kind of explains why some players are like at different levels, if that makes sense. So why is Russia so good at propaganda? Well, they've been doing it for a really long time. And I think it's, especially if you're trying to learn more about the war in Ukraine right now and understanding Russia, not only internal Russia, but how Russia communicates with other countries, this book will give you very good background information, and does talk about the violence in the 2014, and talks about the culture within Ukraine and how Ukrainians had to deal with that misinformation. I thought it was a very good book. It's very relevant, and I appreciate the mention of all these people who are doing and actually taking on the fight of misinformation. It feels sometimes very like futile if you're just on the internet and you see a bunch of fake news or whatever, and to have people say like, no, here's people who are using the internet to do good. There's a lot of good that can be done here, and also here are people who are actively fighting the bad. Like, I don't know, that was kind of hopeful and inspiring. So in third place is the Aosawa murders by Riku Onda. Let me make sure I'm saying that correctly. Yes, by Riku Onda. So this book is on this list, first of all, because it's a great book. It's sort of a murder mystery, but it starts several decades after a mass murder has occurred at this wealthy family's house during a birthday party. There was poison, like this family was poisoned, and the only surviving family member is the like blind daughter. And the book, what I found fascinating about the book is, for a mystery novel, it goes so far beyond that. It really is telling the life story. Yeah, there's a mystery element to this, but even if you don't like mystery, I feel like you'll get a lot out of this. And it's really beautiful the way that just certain characters talk about their lives. It's really also, what I liked about it is it talked so much about these people and how their lives were affected outside of like the immediate family members or the immediate people involved. It talks about people who were sort of afflicted by this crime, that this affected them, and they had to deal with it in some way. Someone was a suspect or someone was considered involved, and how they were harassed, and all of these small stories that come together to paint a picture. And yes, there are mystery elements to this. You do learn more about the crime, but in reality, you also learn about what these characters think about the world around them. And the stories, like, they're not really stories, it's sort of a chapter book, right? But each chapter is written in a different perspective. So it might be a news clipping, it might be, I think there was like a police report or something. You might be having a conversation, something's told from first person, I think something's told from second person. So you're reading a book, but it's this sort of disjointed way. It's not a consistent way of telling a story. And I thought it was creative and interesting and dynamic. And like I said, you can read this without being super interested in mystery novels. I just got an alert on my iPad, an article from CNN. Nobody likes self-checkout. Here's why it's everywhere. I don't know. I love self-checkout. Least humans possible, please. Also because I carry all of my groceries like a crazy person, and I don't want someone to like watch me carry my groceries. That is not relevant. Next up on my list is Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. This was lent to me by a good friend. Hey girl. And it is a book that discusses several major themes, but a lot of it being end of life care, be that old age or a terminal illness, how we view the end of our lives, what we value, how we have these conversations with our loved ones. And I think the book has made me reconsider my relationship with the aging folks in my family, but also my relationship with what do I want out of my life? What is appropriate? How I think about medicine too, because a lot of the book is discussing, you know, the science of you're sick. The doctor's job is to make you the least sick possible. But there's a point where it's like diminishing returns. Yeah, you can go and get a treatment, but that treatment might not make you better. It might just waste your time. It might keep you in a hospital when really what you want is to be at home with loved ones. I think everyone should read this. I think it deals so excellently with the question of what do you value? What are you fighting for? What kind of life do you want to lead? Like, what if this was your last day and there was so little you could do? How would you spend it? Yeah, it's a tough book, I think, because it makes you question all these things, but it's also a really hopeful book. Like, I think I'm probably like less afraid of death because of this book, my own and others. And I know what I would value, and I know what would matter to me. I think it's beautiful. Really beautiful book. The last book on my list, so this, I said there wasn't like a big ranking, one versus the other. This book is one of the best books I have read ever, and that is Silence by Shūsaku Endō. This book is so good, and I did not think I was going to like it originally, so to read it and love it as much as I did was chef's kiss. So the book is about two Jesuit priests who travel to Japan because there are rumors that their mentor has apostatized, which means giving up the faith. I did not know that. I think I knew that kind of, but I really figured it out because of this book. So there's rumors that their mentor has apostatized, and they travel to Japan, where now like Christianity is totally banned, to prove that this is false and find the guy in general. And when they go there, they are confronted with the cruelty that Japanese Christians are facing. That's like the very quick entry into the book. The deeper part of this book is the title, right? Silence refers to the silence of God in the face of suffering of his followers. And I think that Endō does, like, it's so powerful, I think. I think the themes it brings up, this idea of forgiveness, of falling down and getting back up, being a good Christian, following what you believe, pride in the idea that you are being a good follower of something. I mean, wow, like who is truly the best Christian in this book, right? What space do you have to judge someone not knowing what they've been through? Who did certain characters do the right thing? Did they do the right thing? And it's fascinating because I know my perspective on this. I know the character that I think is the best. And not the best, but I know the character that I feel like most represents how I want to view Christianity, right? Like, I'm not like whatever my beliefs are, right? Like, that's, if I was to say I think this is religiously, this is good, I know the character I'm relating to. But I was watching like a lot of, I think, Catholic priests, I believe. I don't know what you call a professional Catholic, but they were reviewing this, and they're talking, well, like, this guy didn't do the right thing. Like, you wouldn't say this is right. And I was very amazed and very interested, right? When you have such a black and white view of what is right and what is wrong, listening to these people who there's only one acceptable outcome for them, right? Like, there is only one thing you are allowed to do if you are a Christian, and that is never give up Jesus. But if you are being tortured, like, that's not easy. How do you just say, oh, well, like, you can't give this up, you have to just be tortured?
Okay, part of why I mention this, because I realize it makes sense why Christians would be like, under no circumstances can you give up the faith. But in this book, and again, this is spoilers, skip ahead, in this book, it's not you being tortured, it's like other people's lives being ruined, it's other people being tortured on your behalf. What right do you have to think that you're so amazing, that your love of God is worth more than these people's lives? Like, that's the part that to me is really difficult.
I don't know, like, that's wild. It was interesting to listen to those people talk about it. The movie too, Martin Scorsese has a film adaptation of Silence, and it's very clear that he respects the text so much. It was quite realistic, not a lot of floweriness from Scorsese's part. He really kept it to the book, and I think he does a good job of bringing in the major questions of the book. I think they carry over really well. Another thing I really appreciated about this book is that it came at it from a lot of different angles. So you have these religious people coming into Japan, and that is in a lot of ways taking power away from the leadership. And so you see the political motivations that certain characters have. You see these religious motivations. You see all of this space, and I think that Endō is describing the motivations of a lot of characters, and also, you know, what the experience would have been, like what the socio-political climate was at the time. And, you know, Endō himself was a Catholic Japanese man. So he has a very critical and interesting take, and I think there is space to, like, how does one interpret that silence from God? How does one feel, and how does that affect someone when they're in that moment? It's a beautiful book, and I think, like just sticks with you now, right? It sticks with you. It's so good. I don't know how else to say it. So those are my top 5 books. Like I said, not really in a particular order, but just 5 books I really enjoyed and highly recommend other people checking out. Let me know if you have any books that you've really enjoyed. Thank you so much.